Greetings folks, and welcome to the latest episode of 8/16/32-bit. I'm Learned Rob, I'm your host today, and you've already seen the thumbnail image, so you know exactly what this one's going to be about. I'm going to tell it as it is. The great video game crash of the 1980s is a myth. Well, mostly anyway. Now, let's set some scene here. In the late 70s and early 80s, video gaming's biggest market was I would say it definitely was the United States of America. Atari were dominant. The Atari VCS, or 2600 as it was later known, was the dominant platform. Other American companies such as Coleco and Intellivision tried to muscle in on the market, and they did take some of it, but Atari was king. Now, in 1983, the market collapsed. It just did. Many things have been blamed for this. Some people say it was the fact that there were so many games being released that the quality had just slipped too drastically. Other people preferred instead to blame the failure of Atari's E.T. game, for which Atari allegedly produced more cartridges than there were actual consoles in existence. Now, I don't know the truth of that statement, but it's the kind of, coke-fueled business-making decisions that people made in Silicon Valley back in the day, and probably still do, to be fair. Honestly, that's a joke. But yeah, the US console video game market certainly did collapse in 1983. However, if you go around the internet these days, Wikipedia, various discussion forums, Twitter or X, even Blue Sky Mastodon, you will see a lot of people, and not just Americans I have to say, who insist that in 1983 the video game market crashed and it was basically dead until the NES launched in America in 1985. And that is utter nonsense. You see, whilst the console market in the US may have died, outside of the US, in Europe, in Japan, and to some extent within the United States, video gaming carried on quite happily. How? Simple. Home computers. Especially in Europe and Japan at the time, 8-bit home computers such as the Commodore 64, the Sinclair ZX Spectrum, the Atari line of 400, 800, etc., the Apple II, these machines still sold, and games still sold. Indeed, during the purported crash where video games were dead from 1983 to 1985, certainly in the United Kingdom where I hail from, the Sinclair Spectrum became a huge success, finding its way into countless households and launching countless video game careers, people who to this day set global standards for video game development. And this was happening everywhere, all across Europe. The various 8-bit micros sold really well. You went to Japan, the MSX platform performed really well, plus various other proprietary platforms produced by Japanese electronics manufacturers. And even in the United States, where this crash happened and video gaming was supposedly dead, the Commodore 64 and the Apple II and the Atari line of systems sold really well. Hell, the Commodore 64 is allegedly the world's best-selling home computer of a single specification. And I'm inclined to believe that. It was a damn popular machine. Not so popular here in Europe, but still an excellent seller and a popular option. But where did this myth, and it is a myth, that the video games industry completely crashed in 1983 come from? Simple. It's a matter of perspective. The internet, especially the English-speaking internet, is dominated by people from America. Because, simple maths, there are more Americans out there speaking English than there are people from the United Kingdom or Australia or New Zealand or any other English-speaking country. So, the narrative is set by those people. And as far as many retro gaming aficionados from the US are concerned, console gaming was the big thing, and it did die. Yes, the Atari VCS was still available, and there were other attempts such as the Atari 5200 and then the 7800. But yeah, console gaming as we know it in the West certainly did get its kickstart with the release of the NES in the United States in 1985, after a successful launch in, ironically, I believe 1983 in Japan. Obviously, this leads on to another thing where the NES was the king and the dominant system, which it was globally, although again, Europe likes to be different. We had the Master System from Sega instead as our dominant system. But, you know, the crash is false. It's a myth. If you don't want to believe that, don't believe it. Now, I know there are people out there that are going to listen to what I've got to say here, and yeah, as I said, they won't believe it because that's what they experienced. That's their truth. But the reality of the situation is that mostly the video game crash was a lie. You don't have to accept it as being the truth. In fact, you don't have to accept anything you see about the video game crash as being the truth, because trust me, you'll see a lot of nonsense about it. The sheer amount of people and places that insist that it was the fault of Atari in the ET game is incredible. Fact is, the market was saturated, it had peaked, and, you know, the 1980s was a strange time. There were economic issues at the time, and that did play into it. The market just couldn't support itself, and it failed. And unlike today, where companies plan for a new generation of systems, that really wasn't how things worked back then. That only became something that happened in the late 80s and into the early 90s. And yeah, that's where it left us. Now, if you want to leave any comments about this, please feel free to leave them down below. I will read them, and if I think they're interesting, I'll respond to them. If you have enjoyed this video, you know, do hit that like button. Do hit the subscribe button if you really like it. And if you really, really, really like it, hit the bell to be notified of the next time I upload a video. Now, I will say as well, there are other ways you can support the channel. You'll see a link down below in the description for my Ko-fi page. You can also just, you know, show your support by following me on social media and sharing my posts about my videos. But anyway, I'm Rob. This has been 81632-bit, and I will catch you on the next video. Until then, so long.